Hey, did you know board games can be cooperative? What? This game, Pandemic, is one of the first cooperative games that will come to anyone's mind, but isn't good enough to maintain its classic status. So, let's get on to the review. Pandemic is a cooperative game for 2 to 4 people where players are in charge of saving the world from not one, but 4 diseases threatening to cause a global epidemic. They take turns moving around the world, gathering data to discover the cure for each disease, clearing up sickness in cities, and building research stations. Time for a component overview, what you get in the box. You got this rulebook, the main game board right here. Rather nice if you have a smaller table. The infection deck right here. So this infection deck is where all the disease might spread to, a bunch of cities. Next one is the roll cards. You got 7 roll cards, all different colors, have cool abilities. Then you got the player aids for each player. So this game does play from 2 to 4 players. So you got 4 player aids, they're all double-sided. Next, we have the player deck. These are cards the players will be drawing every turn. Need to combine these to solve diseases. Next, we got the epidemic cards. These are the nasty cards that are the baddies in the game. There are 6 of these. You can play from 4 to 6 of them. The next one are these pawns. So you got all these pawns for the different characters, but you also got infection markers, cure markers, and these research stations. These are all wooden, which is actually pretty convenient. I always like that wooden feel. And lastly, you got the 4 disease cubes. So you got black, blue, yellow, and red. They're plastic. Pretty translucent. The goal of the game of Pandemic is to find the cure for these 4 diseases. The players lose when too much disease has been spread, or the players run out of time. At the start of the game, the world will look like this, with disease cubes all over the world. We got concentration of 3 cubes, concentration of 1 cube, and concentrations of 2 cubes. Players must plan carefully to cure the disease by giving one player 5 cards of one color. But they must be vigilant in suppressing the disease as more spread every turn with this infection deck. 2 things make the spread of disease exciting. One is that if you place 1 cube where there's already 3, which is the max amount there could be on one city, then the disease spreads to every city it is connected to. The second thing is the epidemic cards, which are hidden in this blue player deck. And when these get flipped, they increase the spawn rate of disease every round, spawn 3 disease cubes to the city on the bottom of the infection deck, which in this case would be Istanbul, so we put 3 cubes on there. And then it's going to take your entire discard of your infection deck, shuffle it, and put it on top. On each player's turn, they can take 4 actions as denoted by this player card. Then once they're done, they draw 2 cards from the player deck and then infect cities according to the infection rate. When you cure all diseases, you win the game. Now onto the pros of Pandemic. The first pro is the 7 character roll cards in this game are great, giving the game a lot more replayability than you might otherwise think, since these give players different ways to approach the game as a theory craft, which Pandemic team works best for them. The abilities of each character match the title well, and when you're playing that character, you really feel like you're embodying that specific role. For example, the Dispatcher allows you to move anyone else, but also you can teleport anyone to anyone else's location. This really makes you feel like you're dispatching people across the world to go do different missions. Next pro is the scaling of this game is moderately good, with 3 to 4 players working the best. However, we did notice that this makes a great 2-player cooperative game if each player is willing to play 2 characters. I actually have the most fun in this game mode, but I can't recommend it highly because of how much each player would have to keep track of, because each player is keeping track of 2 characters at once. Next pro is this included player aid, which has icons detailing what each action does. This is very useful for explaining what exactly that action does at a glance. The next pro is with regards to the epidemic card mechanic, which causes the discard pile of infections to be shuffled on top of the infection deck. This makes the game more focused, where players can now plan around a select pool of cities to concentrate on where they know diseases will eventually spawn. Now, it's on to the cons of Pandemic. The first one, this tripped us so hard, is that the instruction booklet is confusing as hell. It's so easy to mess up rules, ranging from how a certain character's ability works to how epidemics are treated, and even the difference between eradicating and curing a disease. There's a reason why there's a lot of facts for this game online, because it is so easy to screw up a handful of rules and make Pandemic too hard at easy mode or too easy at hard mode. Here at Shelfside, we had some problems with the narrative of this game because there really isn't any. Board gamers online encourage you to roleplay and give diseases different names according to their color, like they want black to be the zombie disease and red to be the bird flu, but this feels really forced. The designers of this game, they tried to help the narrative of this game by adding art on these roll cards, which are done well. But everything feels very abstract because there's a weak narrative overall. There's no lore, there's a really bland objective, and the diseases are just kind of cubes that spawn in a very dry way. Aesthetically, the game looks good, like the board is nice. But thematically, when you're playing the game, it doesn't feel like you're saving the world. It just kind of feels like you're a pawn on a map, moving around and doing a thing. Now, speaking of aesthetics, the player aid needs some work. It should list round phases and objectives, and shouldn't be double-sided for how simple the gameplay is. The player aid should be much bigger, as it's currently way too small. We think a player aid should be able to convey a large amount of information at a glance, which this small card fails to do. The next cons fall under the hat of Pandemic's heavily restrictive gameplay, which begins with the semi-randomized openings with a setup consisting of dumping disease cubes on the first 9 cards flipped from the infection deck. This makes every game feel too similar despite looking varied. There should have been some type of themed outbreaks that focused on certain diseases or regions of the world each playthrough. An example of this would be a North American outbreak where players have to race to secure their homeland but have an advantage due to all the players starting the game in CDC, which is located in Atlanta, Georgia. This could serve as a tutorial mode due to the ease of curing North American diseases. Harder modes could incorporate Asian or Middle Eastern outbreaks or some other theme outbreak. Honestly, like give us H1Z1 or the return of the bubonic plague or something of the sort. Because the openings are essentially all the same in this game, once you find out the formula of what to prioritize in this game with a team that works for you, the game feels very solved in terms of what a consistent strategy is. This stems from the problems ranging from game to game not being that varied, at least on hard mode. You do have 4 actions to turn, but sometimes it is ideal to just sit around and wait if you're in an optimal location. This feels like wasting time since there are no downtime actions players can do, where in many other co-op games there is room to do additional research, buy items, or rest your character. The epidemic cards that we praised earlier for their manner in prioritizing the game actually do feel too strong when they hit, due to their nature of immediately dropping 3 cubes on any one space. If there are any single cubes on any city from previous outbreaks, an immediate outbreak occurs. This often causes chain reactions that frequently lose players the game, or at least get them into a very precarious situation. When things get into a negative space where the game finalizes its stranglehold on you, you're actually screwed. There is no ebb and flow in this game, just a constant pressure to not be enveloped by the disease. We have been theory crafting a bunch of solutions to solve the stupidly strong unreactable epidemic card, and one of them is to put a 1-turn delay on the drop of the 3 cubes from the bottom card of the infection deck. This would allow players to react in time to clean cubes to prevent an outbreak, but currently there is no way to react to the strength of an epidemic card. Because this game is so restrictive, it encourages quarterbacking, where knowledge is so public as gamers are encouraged to play with hands face up. Gameplay is very linear, so the owner of the game who has played this game plenty of times before will find himself frustrated at the inexperience of others and would prefer to direct them into the pandemic strategy. Actually, quickly to mention, Daniel was playing by himself while we're waiting for construction noises outside to die down, and he felt like it was much more concise, a lot clearer in general. You could see all the information while playing by yourself. It's just like, there's no need to play with other people, honestly. It's just the nature of the game.
All right, Doc, what do we got here?
Well, we got Pandemic. It's 10 years old, but we still got to give it a recommender score.
All right, yeah. So the recommender score is that thing where we try to judge a game a little more objectively, assess all of our pros and cons and put it on a scoring scale that makes sense how we would think the average board game player would see it.
Yeah, I think this game is slightly accessible as long as you're reading or watching an online resource. The theme is pretty easy to grasp. It's pretty universal theme, curing diseases and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to point out that this game is in fact 10 years old, though, so that does make a little bit quirks, make more sense as to why they might be like that. But
exactly, yes.
If you're a serious gamer, right, there's tons of good games that are out right now, so you pretty much just look elsewhere,
Yeah, I think you should check this game out if you're curious how co-op games are like. It kind of spearhead the whole player versus enemy sort of genre for board games.
Definitely true, right? So it's definitely, I don't think it's like the first of its type, it was kind of like the one that was like the pioneer, but
exactly.
Unfortunately, this game has its narrative is so weak. Oh my god!
I really have to agree with you there.
Yeah, the diseases they're not even really distinctive enough to matter. There's no personality to the game. It's just they just kind of show up.
You have to imagine it like you're fighting someone. Pandemic, has you in a stranglehold, which you as a player are trying to break. In a game like Eldritch, another co-op game we really like, it's more like an MMA fight, where there's tons of options to do and there's an inherently more complicated situation. But this game is just a slow, steady death.
But yeah, what do you think about this game, guys? Yeah? Okay, 5 out of 10? 5 out of 10.
5 out of 10, yeah. I have to agree with you there.
Dead on average, alright.
Dead average.
Alright, got the assessment, let's go.
Oh, man. Whew. This game feels too safe for me with the sterile theme so standard in an attempt to appeal to as wide of a range as possible, and with not enough spontaneity to keep games fresh to my liking. After the 10th playthrough of this game, I was thoroughly done, and I can't fault people for dropping the game after 1 or 2 playthroughs. My personal score will be a 4 out of 10, a below average game. I really did like this game when I first got it about 5 years ago. I was fascinated by the co-op experience. Now this game is really showing its age, but you can see why some people might regard it as a classic a long time ago.
What's up? It's time for my personal score. This game is going to get a 4 out of 10 for me. This game is below average, since it fails to wow me in pretty much any department, and at worst bores me during the gameplay. I'm personally a big fan of games like Eldritch Horror or Mansions Madness because I always have a sense of stuff happening during those games. But in Pandemic, the diseases I'm facing are just colors. There's no story behind them or anything that goes on differently with them. And so no matter what, the game just feels the same on subsequent playthroughs. You're also just kind of grinding out your character's role while being completely detached from the world of Pandemic. You're just a medic bot or an operations expert bot, just doing the thing that the character does over and over again.
Pandemic. This game is heralded as a cooperative classic for everyone, but we feel hesitant to recommend it to anyone because we feel like it doesn't do the cooperative experience justice. There's little quality teamwork and the game typically falls victim to quarterbacking due to the game's linear nature, which we cannot stress enough as a major contributor towards the majority of this game's problems. Compared to other cooperative games, it doesn't do anything particularly well, but we can't call it bad since everything is serviceable. Ultimately, Pandemic fails to deliver an above and beyond experience because the gameplay is so average and the narrative is so weak. Nothing about this game stands out, but we're not going to fault you for playing this. If you're already a fan of cooperative games and this game appeals to you, then check it out, but otherwise, don't feel bad for sitting this one out. Coming up in the near future on Shelfside, we have Pandemic Legacy, one of this game's successors. See you guys next time. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.